I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian, and welcome to The Sidebar, the weekly show on the community, arts, culture, and more. Today we're talking to Carolyn Norris, President and CEO of Volunteer Odyssey. So stay with us for a conversation with Carolyn, and a special thanks to our sponsor, Tresident Manor. Carolyn, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You're, what, two months into the job?
Barely 2 months.
Yeah. Taking over for Sarah Pashonik, which
Yes.
I've interviewed many times over the years in various capacities, 10, 12 years.
Yes.
All Volunteer Odyssey's been around.
Absolutely.
And the founding CEO, so.
I'm such a big fan of hers that it's a real full circle, kind of cheesy moment that when I moved to Memphis 9 years ago, I got plugged in with Volunteer Odyssey to try to meet new people and to serve and get to know my new hometown. And then I worked with Cooper Young Community Association, then Alsac St. Jude, and now most recently at Shelby Farms Park. And we leveraged the Volunteer Odyssey platform to use it on the nonprofit side to recruit volunteers. And I've gotten to know Dr. Sarah and her staff for all of those years in many different capacities, have used their best practices and asked them for help and guidance on, how can we recruit better volunteers or more? And so I've been such a huge fan and so grateful for this organization to now be able to overlap with her for about 6 or 8 weeks and gain all of that knowledge that she has been building and transforming over the last decade, to then be able to take that and run with it while she follows her odyssey onto the next path of she's going to be working in disaster relief out in DC. And so it's just kind of this really cheesy, really beautiful story.
Yeah, no, she's amazing. And I've talked to her, again, like I said, interviewed her numerous times and see her around and stuff. And it's an amazing organization, but for people who don't know what it does, tell us.
So it's again, if you'll let me be just a little bit cheesy, pathway to purpose. We try to connect those who want to help with the organizations and the needs at hand. And so making those connections as easy as possible. We really have the big idea. What if our nonprofit partners had the right volunteers at the right time in the right places? Could they accomplish their missions if they had all the people that they needed, all the hands to work? And so we really focus with we've got about 70 nonprofits that we work with, so that we can really get to know them, understand what their mission is, what their experiences are, so that then when companies or organizations or even individuals come to us, we can say, hey, you're interested in this cause. You've got this on your schedule. You've got these skills. This is going to match perfectly with Catholic Charities Mobile Food Pantry or Clean Memphis' Loving Local event that we helped them recruit for a week or two ago. Yeah. So those are the things that we try to really get to know everyone to make sure that they have a great experience.
So this is a probably simplistic way to say it, but a bit of a clearinghouse, like bringing people to these people, people together to the organizations you work with. So a company says, my employees want to do a volunteer day. We don't know where to go. We don't have a volunteer coordinator on staff. What do we do? Potentially that's where you call Volunteer Odyssey and they say, hey, we've got lots of nonprofits with lots of things going on.
That's fair. That's totally fair. And that we do get a lot of those requests, especially some of our bigger companies here, they want to have a big fancy day of service and have their hundreds of employees go and do one big project together. We love that, and we love the way that, it's so fun to see your teams work together and to build a project and lots of team bonding. But on the nonprofit side, having been on that side, it's really, really hard to create projects for 100 people on a specific day.
Right.
It's so hard.
I mean, it's like, thank you so much. We love you, but this isn't going to work for us. And then you're saying if it were 6 months from now, or it was 50 people, not 100, or Exactly. I mean, you don't want to be rude, for lack of a better phrase.
Nonprofits never want to say no to hands or no to money. That is not what we like to do. But so we at Volunteer Odyssey have tried to curate some experiences that we can work with those organizations and say, hey, what if here are some great nonprofit partners that need, to your point, 20 people, 50 people, 10 people. we can help work with them to coordinate maybe one day or a week that all of your team could serve those places. So you still get that, you're going to have that department bonding. You're still going to get that kind of halo effect that not only great company are you doing good work, but you're also investing in your community, but in a way that really works best for the nonprofit and doesn't add more, not add more work, add more hands.
Yeah. Again, we're here with Caroline Norris of Volunteer Odyssey. She is the relatively new president and CEO. And I should always note that we're in Crosstown on the 10th floor in the atrium. If you hear the classical music, we're still flooded out of our permanent studio as we kind of figure out what's next for a studio. But it's actually fun for me to be in the atrium. I'm looking at Natalie Van Gundy, the producer. It's not as fun for her because the sound is a little challenging, but that's the classical music in the back. People who want to get involved, I assume it could be an individual, somebody who's just like I or my family want to get involved. It's not all corporate.
Totally. In fact, that's what it was founded on. Sarah, over a decade ago, she had this dream of figuring out how to best serve a community by volunteering at 30 nonprofits in 30 days, which is a really crazy, time-consuming thing to schedule out. But it helped her see, hey, there's a need to connect people and make it really easy to schedule and connect. And so she really was thinking of it from an individual standpoint. If you want to give back to your community, how might you find something that matches your skills, your interests, your schedule? And now it has grown to be able to do that for companies, organizations, or groups. Schools, we work with a lot of schools. A lot of students have a requirement to serve the community, which we love. We love that it is educating not just the head, but the heart and the hands.
Right. So schools of all types. I forgot about the school part. Like in schools down to what grade, what level, that kind of thing.
That's a great question. It is mostly high schools, and then all of the universities here are so great at wanting to invest back into Memphis, and not just by, putting their kiddos out for internships, but actually serving. And so it is a lot of university help. And in fact, at Shelby Farms Park, we relied super heavily on those university students because for our largest fundraiser at the Park Starry Nights Holiday Light Show, we needed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of volunteers. And so we love those kids that have their service requirements.
Yeah. I assume, too, anybody younger in high school where they can't drive or ride with a friend, the logistics spiral, I would assume. Yeah,
that's right. So we really encourage for our younger volunteers. We still want to create that kind of ecosystem of lifelong volunteerism. So we don't want to stamp out the littles in service, but
the littles. Is that a phrase? I didn't know that. I like that.
I always mess up the idioms, so don't take it to work.
No, that's great. My kids are like the bigs because they're like 25 years old. So the littles. I love that.
The littles. But they still can have a spirit of volunteerism.
Oh, yeah.
So, but with their parents, family, because yes, logistics is hard.
Yeah, logistics is hard. The types of nonprofits, 70 nonprofits is a lot.
It's a lot.
There are hundreds in Memphis.
Hundreds and hundreds.
So how do you sort of balance that out?
I think that's a great question, and that is something that we're always trying to improve. But we actually haven't been able to take on any new partners in 3 or 4 years. Probably pre-COVID is really when we kind of...
New nonprofit partners where you're placing people, just to be clear. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
New nonprofit partners. So because we really feel that it is critical that when an individual or a group signs up for a volunteer activity, that they have a great experience. And what we mean by that is that when they get there, someone knows that they are coming. They're greeted. And that on the nonprofit side, they can leverage that to talk about their mission and kind of spread the good word of what they're doing. Yeah. And then for the volunteer to understand how this maybe 2-3 hour service time impacts the greater mission of that nonprofit, and that it's a meaningful time for them, that they are doing work that they can see clearly helps this nonprofit's mission move forward. And so for us to, again, be able to understand that, be these nonprofit partners, their biggest cheerleaders, and help them recruit. We really need to know all of those things and be able to talk to them one-on-one to make sure that they've got all of the resources that we can provide, all the help that we can do to make sure that they have that. So just the capacity of that, the really interpersonal relationships, it's hard to scale.
Right. Let me do some housekeeping and come back to some questions about all that you just mentioned. But remind everyone that I'm Eric Barnes, and this is The Sidebar. We're talking to Carolyn Norris of Volunteer Odyssey today, President and CEO. The Sidebar airs on WYXR 91.7 every Thursday at 11:30, focused on the community, arts, culture, everything in between. It's not just a radio show, though. It's one of many weekly podcasts we do at the Daily Memphian, including Bill Dree's Politics podcast, On the Record. Sometimes Sam Hardiman is a part of that as well. We've got the Memphis Grizzlies podcast hosted by Drew Hill and Chris Harrington. Actually, 2 podcasts this week with before and after the draft coming up. And we've got Soundbites, our food podcast hosted by Jennifer Chandler, who just joined the Daily Memphian a few weeks ago. That airs, Soundbites does, on WYXR every Thursday at 11, right before the Sidebar. All of our podcasts are on the Daily Memphian site, as well as iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. That includes the Behind the Headline podcast, which we do the audio version of the show over on WKNO every Friday. That's available as well. You can get Soundbites and you can get Sidebar also at WYXR.org or on the WYXR app. That includes all the talk shows and the music shows, archives of those shows. So it's a great way to keep up with what's going on at WYXR. Also, consider becoming a member of WYXR. It's nonprofit, listener-supported radio. You can go to the website, go to the app. You can sign up, become a member. You can do a one-off donation. If you become a member, you get all kinds of benefits. So take a look at that. And also, the Daily Memphian is a nonprofit newsroom, and consider becoming a subscriber there. Paid subscribers are really what pays the bills at Daily Memphian, the largest newsroom in the city and the region. Coming up soon on the Sidebar, we had Rose Smith from the Brooks Museum scheduled, and then she got sick and lost her voice. So it was the best worst excuse not to be able to be on a podcast. But we've got her rescheduled, talking about exhibits going on over at the Brooks. We've also got the folks from the Overton Park Shell coming on. Recently, we had Jacques Osmo, who is a musician, composer, and has started the Health and Healing Institute at UTHSC, the med school here in Memphis. We also had I Make Mad Beats, the producer and musician, along with Kelly English talking. They were talking about an event that has already happened, but it was still really interesting to talk to them about restaurants, talk about music, talk about all kinds of things they have going on. I mentioned Behind the Headlines that, again, we do with the folks over at WKNO. We've got this week the folks, Christopher Reyes, who is the artist and performer, and I don't even know I'm looking at Natalie Van Gundy to help me. But anyway, the really amazing guy who we've interviewed on this podcast before, he is bringing Baron von Opperbein, the experience. It's kind of an immersive art and music and whatever sort of experience to Mud Island. So we'll have him on and some other folks involved with that, including Carol Coletta, the head of River Parks Partnership, along with Catherine Hicks. That's right, Catherine Hicks from the Baron von Opperbein project will be on as well. And Holly Whitfield's doing that show with me. We are super excited about that. Holly Whitfield on TV with me. We are very excited. So that's actually a fun thing. We've also got a little bit more serious shows coming up. The juvenile court judge, Tarek Sugarman, is coming up. Brent Taylor, the state senator, and Josh Spickler from Just City are coming on to talk about criminal justice and some of the proposals that have been put forward and passed into law. And the new CBU president's coming on. I think that's maybe a month from now, but that'll be good as well. We recently had a couple of superintendents from the suburban school districts talking about their sort of where they are 10 years later. Also recently, had Steve Mulroy, the district attorney. He was on the show as well. But we are here with Caroline Norris of Volunteer Odyssey. Talk about the capacity you have on the side of the volunteers. Is that also limited at some point? Or is it, because you talked about being limited in the number, unfortunately, the number of nonprofits, 70 is still a ton. But if people go to the site, they can sign up, they can do one-off things. Do they need to commit to regular things? Like what, for more back to that individual person, what's the rhythm that works? And also, I don't mean this in a bad way, what's the rhythm that doesn't work, right? There's a rhythm where people maybe do a one-off. And that's just not going to work given the effort and time that maybe you have to put into it. that the organization needs, it's not for everyone. And that's
Sure.
kind of a harsher thing to say than maybe I should.
That's okay. I get where you're going with that. And the way that we have set up the platform is that, it's not a commitment. We offer it for free to individuals and for free to our nonprofits, so that you can use the platform however you like. If you have just one Saturday that you want to see, hey, what do I really feel like giving back this one Saturday. What can I do? Where can I go? Where can I serve? That is it's not out of the question. And the platform really makes it easy. And in fact, I got an email 2 days ago from an individual that gave me that exact scenario. And yes, I did spend time with him because I want my nonprofit partners to be, even if they just have a one-off, that's great. However, to your point, it is a much more deeper impact for the nonprofit. And if they can have some real leader volunteers that they know are consistently coming, that understand their mission and can even, it's that interstitial space sometimes that you don't have to explain every single thing that needs to be done. You've got people, you've got partners, volunteers that know hey, maybe this is just a little bit off. I know what to do I don't have to go ask the volunteer manager or the development manager what needs to be done. I can kind of take that and run with it. And so ideally, those are the people that we're recruiting, and that it is more consistent volunteering. But that doesn't work for everybody. And so, we don't want to squash the spirit of volunteerism at all. So we will take what we can get. But if we can have consistent volunteers, that's really, really amazing.
Yeah. I mean, we struggled with that with sometimes with interns. Sure. Interns for us are generally college age, and a lot of them are working and going to school. And it's hard. And sometimes maybe they didn't realize the kind of commitment they'd have to make to really get what they want. It's not so much a criticism. It's just the reality of it. It's why we don't do at Daily Memphian, we get lots of interest from people who want to have high school interns, and we just can't do it because again, the logistics. On your side. Yeah. And I hate that. I mean, honestly, I'd like to expose more people to local journalism, but we just have to be realistic that maybe it's not just that it's not on them, it's also on us. And we don't have the resources. We do now on the college side, because Elle Perry, who many people know, it does a great job coordinating our college interns. But that's what it took, was that somebody who added a bunch of responsibilities to her job because she was really passionate about internships and working. But we could, again, we can't add the high school kids. And it is so hard to say no.
It is.
It's really a weird thing where I just feel terrible. Guilty. and when we don't have enough spots, because we can only do, again, it's somewhat related. But we can only do 2 to 3 interns at any given time because it's a lot.
It's an investment on your side.
Have to say no to a bunch of young people who want to learn more about journalism, who have great resumes and a lot to offer, and we have to say no to them. So anyway, it's just a challenge.
Well, that great experience that you're investing in them to get investment from them, and to hopefully that they're going to take y'all's mission of local journalism on through the rest of their life. It's a mutual relationship. So
right. One of the things y'all do, I just pulled this off the website, is just that impact. I think it's 450,000 hours of service, almost 28,000 volunteers, almost $12 million of value in service.
Yes.
And talk a little bit, I probably should have done this up front. You mentioned a couple things, more examples of the kinds of things people are doing. You mentioned Starry Nights, but there's a whole 70 nonprofits. There's a range of things that people could be doing.
So many different things. So I mentioned Starry Nights because that is one of those that, you've got, it's 40 days and nights of holiday lights. So you can just come once or twice. And then that's the end of your commitment. But we also mentioned the Catholic Charities and their mobile food pantry. That's every single week. It's a few hours every week that are folks that are neighbors that may be struggling to get food on their table, that they can come and get groceries every day. Yeah. And that's an incredible service to our community, but that's not a commitment that you have to do every single week, but you can. Carpenter Art Garden has a mentor program, and the kiddos are literally running after school to be able to get to their mentor because there's a limited number of mentors. Everybody's schedule is a little different.
Yeah.
And with the mentorship program, we really want people that can be more committed consistently, because you are really changing kids' lives when you commit to mentoring. And so kids are running to the art gardens to be able to get to their mentor. And so if we could have more volunteers that could commit to that fits in their schedule, it can be life-changing. Or we've got one-off races that, if the Wolf River Conservancy had their Discovery 5K a couple weeks ago. Yeah. And so we helped recruit volunteers for that. That's a one-time thing. But for them, it's really critical. They can't have that race without the volunteers needed to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, yeah. I remember talking to Sarah, your predecessor and the founder of Volunteer Odyssey by Zoom in COVID. And still, do you feel, I know you've only been there 2 months, but you're obviously very familiar with the organization. Do you feel like, I'm fascinated by this. We're 4 years from whatever, it still seems COVID is having such impact. We just did a story on restaurants and restaurants that are closing and others that are thriving, but restaurants that are closing, a lot of that is legacy COVID stuff. How are you all, if at all, still impacted by COVID?
Definitely still impacted. And, being on that nonprofit side, what we saw is that, as people were feeling safe to gather again, the first thing that they were thinking was not to volunteer. It was to I want to get with my friends. I want to get with my family. I want to have the wedding that I was trying to plan for 3 years before. And now it wasn't to volunteer at their local, the Humane Society, right?
Yeah.
So that is really where we've seen it. Not that people have not been giving, because what we did see over the pandemic is that donations rose from individuals. But we saw corporate dollars go down, which means all of our nonprofit partners, including us, we've seen our corporate dollars go down, and some of those in-person service days went away for a few years. And just this year, it is coming back. And Blackbaud Your Cause just put out their newest reports, and that as of the end of 2023, they are seeing 87% more in-person volunteering than 2022.
Okay, so it's starting.
So it is starting to get there.
Yeah, it's good.
It's just the lag. And so, but our nonprofits, as we all know, they did not lower their need during COVID. In fact, it increased. And so they've kind of been feeling that squeeze of not having enough hands to do the work. So it's great that we're seeing this come back up, and I'm excited to launch some of our programs. In fact, Summer of Service, we just launched in June. We're focusing on 3 different charity opportunities throughout the summer, because a lot of our nonprofit partners see a dip in volunteerism during the summer. Everybody's going on vacation. Everybody's, got things to do. And so we've been working on environmentalism and conservation in June. We're going to look at housing and homelessness and hunger in July. And then August, we'll be thinking about getting the kids back to school. So we're going to look at our arts and education organizations and really try to get some more focus back on, even if you do have just a couple of hours one week, if you're back from vacay, we've got opportunities and we've got nonprofits that need help.
Yeah. With a couple minutes left here, you mentioned you were at Shelby Farms for 5 years.
Yeah.
You were at Alsec St. Jude for about 5 years, I think, before that. Why this work? What brought you to this sort of work? But you also, I was looking at your LinkedIn, you were at Paycom for a year or something, which looked like a very businessy, but which fine. But why this?
Well, when I moved to Memphis, I had been in kind of corporate life, but had worked for organizations that had a very entrepreneurial spirit. And I feel like people throw that word around, but what I love about it is that it is scrappy. It is, it's okay to fail. It is okay to move fast, and high strive for excellence is kind of the theme of all of the organizations, the for-profits I was working for. But when I moved to Memphis, and I literally got involved with Volunteer Odyssey, saw how many people love this city and give back to it. There is so much good happening here and so many people working for the good that I thought, you know what, I volunteer on my part-time, my off time. I kind of love this, and this is where I want my heart and my passion to be. I can take all of my business knowledge and nonprofits that thrive operate like a business, but with a heart. And so I felt like I could translate that into nonprofit work. And it's been so incredible to be able to work for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital and know that we recruit the best minds in the world to Memphis, Tennessee to find cures, save children. And then to be able to work for Shelby Farms Park, the largest urban park in the nation. That is incredible. We are so lucky to have these things here in Memphis. It's been, I feel like I've honored, charmed life to be able to plug into all these places.
Right. Last question before we go. I always try to ask, since YXR is fundamentally a music station, what was the first concert you went to? People have the range of reactions to the question is so funny.
Oh my gosh. Well, because it's New Kids on the Block.
Oh, that's a good one. That's good. We may have had New Kids. We've had one other New Kids. Where was that?
It was in Greenville, South Carolina, where I grew up. And it was probably not right in Greenville. I remember we had to go out to, it was like a 45-minute drive, and it was probably the latest night I'd ever been allowed to stay up.
12, 13, 14 or something?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It was great. And then I locked my mom's keys in the car that night.
Oh, that's fun.
So I have some vivid memories of NKOTB.
Yeah. All right. Well, Carolyn Norris, President CEO of Volunteer Odyssey. People can go to volunteerodyssey.org, I think it is, or they can search for Volunteer Odyssey and they'll find it and learn more about getting involved, learn more about the organization. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for letting me be here.
Again, though, that is all the time we have this week. A reminder, the Sidebar airs on WYXR 91.7 every Thursday at 11:30. If you missed any of the show today, you can get the full podcast of the interview on the Daily Memphian site, on WYXR, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to this podcast and our other Daily Memphian podcasts, including the Behind the Headlines podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Thanks.